On the morning of her 65th birthday, Sophia Harrington stood alone in her lakefront kitchen in Savannah, Georgia, putting the final touches on a dinner she had prepared with care. Her signature lemon herb chicken, buttery mashed potatoes, and freshly baked cornbread. The table was set with crystal glasses and vintage silverware, passed down through generations. She had hoped for a quiet celebration, just her and her son Nathan, the boy she had raised alone after her husband's untimely passing. But instead of a warm hug or birthday wishes, Nathan arrived at the doorstep with a woman she had never met. Aria, heavily pregnant and clearly uninterested in pleasantries. The gift they brought? A cruel proposition. Aria would be moving in, and Sophia was expected to serve as their live-in help, maid, cook, and nanny, all in exchange for being allowed to remain in her own home. Sophia didn't flinch. She didn't cry. With a calm that shook the very walls, she excused herself, stepped into her bedroom, and quietly made a phone call. By nightfall, she had reserved a private suite at Silverwood Gardens, the most luxurious senior living community in the state, and decided once and for all to live for herself. 2 days after her birthday, Sophia Harrington sat by her bedroom window, staring out at the quiet lake. The spring air was cool, but something inside her had already gone cold. Her once cheerful home had turned into a battleground of entitlement and manipulation. Aria now dominated the living room, cluttering it with baby toys and pastel-colored decor. Her once orderly kitchen was stripped of its warmth, her favorite cookbooks shoved into storage, replaced by gadgets Aria insisted were essential for modern parenting. Meanwhile, Nathan barely looked up from his phone, his voice constantly echoing through the hallways as he scrambled to save his failing investment project. Sophia overheard bits and pieces, cash flow problems, rejected proposals, mounting debts. And yet, he still expected breakfast to be served, laundry to be folded, and the house to run like clockwork without a single thank you. The final blow came one afternoon when Sophia returned from the garden and found Aria packing away her mother's cherished china set. "This stuff's ancient," Aria scoffed, wrapping a delicate teacup in newspaper. "We'll order something modern online." Sophia stepped into the room, her voice low but steady. "That set belonged to my mother. She served tea to her friends with those same cups, sitting in this very room." Aria didn't flinch. "Well, your mother's gone. Isn't it time to let go of the past?" That night, Sophia didn't cry. Instead, she pulled out a file from her drawer and reviewed every detail she had planned since the birthday dinner that never was. She had signed the contract with Silverwood Gardens, arranged a private trust to protect her finances, and finalized the legal paperwork to transfer the house, not to Nathan, but to Grace, her longtime friend and housekeeper, and a few others who had truly stood by her through the years. The next morning, Nathan stumbled into the kitchen, still groggy, holding Aria's smoothie cup like it was a burden. "Hey, Mom, can you whip up something light for Aria? She's having morning sickness again." Sophia didn't move. She looked at him for a long time. "You didn't even touch the meal I made for my birthday." Nathan shrugged. "She said it smelled too strong. You know how pregnancy makes you sensitive." Her heart didn't break, it hardened. "Nathan," she said, her tone calm and deliberate, "this isn't a boarding house. I'm not your servant. I'm not your insurance plan." He scoffed. "So what? You're just going to abandon us?" She smiled faintly. "I'm finally choosing not to abandon myself." That afternoon, she made one final call, confirming the movers, confirming her suite at Silverwood, and confirming that she wouldn't be returning. She stood by the window, the lake reflecting the pale blue sky, and whispered to herself, "It's time." The morning light spilled through the lace curtains of Sophia's bedroom, but the peace was short-lived. From downstairs, she heard clanging pots, muffled swearing, and Aria's sharp voice bouncing off the walls. "This kitchen is a disaster," Aria complained, inspecting the old-fashioned stove like it was a health hazard. "No air fryer, no juicer. How am I supposed to prep meals for the baby in this prehistoric mess?" Sophia stood silently at the top of the stairs listening. "Mom, mind fixing us some eggs and toast?" Nathan called lazily from the dining room. "Aria's super sensitive these days. She threw up twice last night." Sophia descended the stairs slowly, her eyes falling on the untouched casserole still sitting in its dish. The birthday dinner she had made with such care. Cold, congealed, forgotten. "You didn't even try it," she said quietly. Nathan looked up, annoyed. "We ordered in. Aria said your cooking was too greasy. Her stomach's been all over the place." As Sophia turned to toss the food, she noticed something that made her freeze. Her mushroom soup, hours of work, had already been dumped. The bowl was in the trash, spoon still inside. She stood still, porcelain bowl in hand, her knuckles turning white. "This is temporary," she said, voice like frost. "You two staying here. The way you treat this home, me." Nathan glanced up, confused. "What's that supposed to mean? Aria's carrying your grandchild. Can't you be a little more supportive?" Sophia's gaze was steel. "That child is yours, not mine. I'm not your nanny. I'm not your backup plan. I'm your mother, not your doormat." Nathan's face flushed with anger. "You used to love me. What happened to you?" Sophia met his eyes. "What happened is I finally stopped pretending that love means letting you walk all over me." Suddenly, Aria spoke up, sauntering in with a smirk. "Well, if you won't help us, the least you could do is chip in. Didn't you say your mom had a nice little nest egg saved up? That could really help with Nathan's investment. You know, for the baby's future." Sophia stared at her, and for the first time saw her clearly. Greed wrapped in fake concern. "So this is what it's really about. Not the baby, not family, just my money." Nathan tried to interject, but his voice faltered. Aria gave him a nudge. "Come on, you said your mom was loaded. We're not asking for much. Just enough to get the business running." Sophia set the soup bowl down, very gently. "You need to leave," she said, her voice unwavering. "This house doesn't belong to you. It never did." Nathan stood shocked. "You're serious? You're kicking us out?" Sophia smiled, sad, resolute. "Do I not have that right?" And with that, she turned, climbed the stairs, and began packing. The soft hum of birdsong outside was the only sound that followed her. Downstairs, silence. Upstairs, liberation. That evening, the house was too quiet, eerily so. Even the wind outside the window seemed to pause, holding its breath. Sophia stood in her study, fingers brushing the spines of old books, memories tucked between each one. Photos of her late husband, framed degrees from her university days, and a small ceramic angel Nathan had made in kindergarten still sat on the bookshelf. But none of it could soften the ache in her chest. She walked to her desk and opened a drawer, pulling out a dusty binder labeled estate planning. For years she had postponed this moment, always believing Nathan would grow, mature, become the man she once hoped he'd be. But now clarity had come, not in the form of a blowout fight, but in a series of small, devastating indifferences. She realized that love, when twisted by entitlement, turns to resentment, and she had been enabling it all along. That night, Sophia made a decision. She called Grace, her longtime friend and former housekeeper whom Nathan had fired without even telling her. "It's me," Sophia said, her voice trembling slightly. "I need you back." Grace didn't hesitate. "I'll be there tomorrow afternoon. I never should have left." The next day, the front door swung open and in marched Grace, just as fierce and full of life as ever. "What in the world is going on in here?" she gasped, eyeing Arya's makeshift baby corner in the living room and piles of designer shopping bags on the floor. "This place looks like a tacky motel," Sophia smiled. "I missed you." That night, Grace made her famous chicken stew, the scent drifting through the home like a balm. Sophia ate slowly, every bite grounding her back into herself. Later, Nathan walked in, sniffing the air. "Wow, smells like childhood," he muttered. When he saw Grace, his expression hardened. "What is she doing here?" "She lives here now," Sophia answered simply. Nathan blinked. "Wait, what?" "I've signed the transfer. The house will belong to Grace and two others who've been part of my life for decades. People who cared." "You're giving away the house?" he shouted, nearly knocking over a glass. "Yes," Sophia said calm, "because this house was never yours. You've treated it like a resource, not a home." "You've gone crazy," Nathan snapped. "I'm your son." "And yet you've treated me like a stranger," she said, her voice still gentle but unyielding. "From this moment forward, I will no longer live a life built around your expectations. I'm not your safety net. I'm not your solution." Nathan's face was red, fists clenched. But Sophia saw it clearly now. Not a man fighting for his family, but a boy afraid of losing control. "I used to think loving you meant sacrificing myself," she continued. "But now I know that real love doesn't ask for dignity in exchange." She turned away, not in anger, but in peace. And in that moment, the perspective that had chained her for decades finally shattered. 2 weeks later, Sophia Harrington stood on the balcony of her new suite at Silverwood Gardens, her hands wrapped around a warm cup of rose tea. Below her, the lake shimmered like glass under the morning sun. Birds sang in the distance, and the air carried the soft scent of lavender from the garden beds nearby. This was her new beginning. Inside, the transition team had unpacked her boxes with care, placing her cherished books on mahogany shelves, hanging her late husband's landscape photos along the hallway, and setting her favorite blanket on the edge of the bed. Everything felt familiar but different, not a relic of a life she once had, but the foundation of the life she was now building. For the first time in decades, no one needed anything from her. No meals to cook, no favors to fulfill, no emotional tightrope to walk. Instead, Sophia's calendar was filled with art workshops, nature walks, and quiet journaling sessions. She took a watercolor class on a whim and discovered her hands still remembered the joy of brush and pigment. It was as though parts of her, long buried under duty, had begun to bloom again. One afternoon, while unpacking a small chest she hadn't opened in years, she found it, a forgotten canvas wrapped in velvet, the last gift from her college friend, Emily Harrington, a passionate painter who had died too young. The painting, titled Orchids at Dusk, depicted a lone woman standing near a quiet lake, bathed in twilight. Emily's handwritten note still clung to the back. "I hope you never forget the dreams we once shared." Sophia stared at it for a long time. She hadn't forgotten. She had simply placed those dreams on pause while raising a child, running a household, keeping everything and everyone afloat. She brought the canvas to the common area gallery at Silverwood. A few residents wandered over, admiring it. One suggested she share more. That night, Sophia made a decision. The next morning, she contacted the City Museum of Fine Arts. She inquired about donating Emily's works, several pieces she had kept sealed away. The curator, stunned by the quality and the story, offered to build an exhibit around them. 3 months later, Women in Nature, the final works of Emily Harrington, opened to critical acclaim. Sophia didn't just attend the opening, she stood at the center of it, surrounded by press, artists, and young students inspired by the legacy she had preserved. With the museum's encouragement, Sophia founded the Emily Harrington Art Foundation, a grant supporting underprivileged youth in pursuing art. The first donation funded supplies for an arts high school in Boston. Others followed: scholarships, materials, internships. Her story, once defined by sacrifice, was now rooted in contribution. As Sophia looked around the exhibit, she felt something she hadn't in years: purpose. Real, honest, grounded purpose. She wasn't a mother waiting for validation. She wasn't a woman clinging to the past. She was the architect of a legacy. And that legacy was just getting started. At Silverwood Gardens, Sophia Harrington blossomed into a version of herself she hadn't seen since she was 25. A woman led by curiosity, not obligation. Every morning, she walked the garden paths barefoot, feeling the dew on her toes. She volunteered at the local library's literacy program for children. She began writing again, short stories, essays, even poems. Pieces of her that had long been buried under layers of expectation now emerged, vibrant and whole. But more than that, she began reconnecting, not with the past, but with people who saw her for who she had become. One afternoon, Martha, her old friend and former housekeeper, visited with news. "The old house is thriving," she said, her eyes lit up. "We've turned the kitchen into a community kitchen. And the garden, it's now a shared plot for neighbors. Fresh herbs, tomatoes, even strawberries. You gave us more than a house, Sophia. You gave us a second chapter." Sophia didn't cry, but her voice trembled when she said, "It was always yours more than his." She no longer thought of Nathan with anger. That emotion had faded like fog lifting after dawn. In its place was clarity. She had loved him fiercely, yes. She had sacrificed too much, yes. But her love had never been a contract, and now it no longer felt like a burden. Then one day a letter arrived. The handwriting was shaky, but familiar. Nathan. He wrote that he had moved into a modest apartment on the outskirts of town, that he had found work in a warehouse, honest, backbreaking, humbling, that Aria had left, that his so-called friends had disappeared when the money stopped. But what struck Sophia most was a single line: "I'm not asking for anything. I just want to become someone worthy of the love you once gave me." She didn't reply. She didn't need to. Forgiveness wasn't something to be rushed or demanded. It would come in time, or perhaps it wouldn't. That didn't make her growth any less real. In a world that had long insisted she stay small, soft, and selfless, Sophia had finally stepped into her own voice. At the next foundation showcase, a young painter named Nora presented her piece, a minimalist watercolor of a woman by a lake, an orchid in bloom by her side. "This is for you," she said shyly. "I heard you love orchids." Sophia held the painting in her hands, her heart swelling. "It looks like me," she whispered. "But not anymore," she added, her voice firm yet kind. "I'm no longer the woman who stands alone by the lake. I've walked into the water. I've let it carry me forward." She wasn't reborn. She was reclaimed. The foundation grew. The gallery expanded. Her days were filled not with noise, but with meaning. She had once thought her best years were behind her, but now at 65, Sophia Harrington was just getting started. Spring had fully arrived at Silverwood Gardens. The tulips along the walkway bloomed in soft hues of pink, yellow, and violet, like little celebrations pushing up through the soil. Sophia Harrington sat on a wicker bench beneath a cherry blossom tree, a soft breeze lifting her silver hair as she sipped chamomile tea. Her journal rested on her lap, but today she wasn't writing. Today she was simply living. She had just returned from a foundation board meeting where she'd signed off on a new partnership with a public school district. Art supplies, studio renovations, mentorship programs, all funded by the Emily Harrington Foundation. Sophia no longer needed applause. The smiles of young artists, the soft thank yous whispered by teens discovering their voices for the first time, those were enough. She had once feared growing old meant fading into invisibility, but here she'd become more visible than ever because she chose to be, not for her son, not for anyone else, for herself. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the lake, the senior choir gathered in the community room. Their harmonies drifted out into the night like a lullaby from a kinder world. Sophia stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, watching the reflection of the moon shimmer across the water. A nurse gently approached her. "Mrs. Harrington, someone is here to see you." She turned slowly. "Who is it?" The nurse hesitated. "He says he's your son." Sophia's breath caught, but she didn't panic. She nodded. "I'll see him outside." On the garden path near the hydrangeas, Nathan stood, thinner now, his eyes sunken, a far cry from the man who had once barked orders in her kitchen. His hands were jammed in the pockets of a worn-out hoodie, and his voice cracked as he greeted her. "You look, well." "I am," she said softly. "I'm not here to ask for anything," he added quickly. "I just wanted to tell you, I read your letter, the one you left in the safe." She nodded but said nothing. "I was angry for a long time," he confessed. "At you, at Dad, at the world, but mostly at myself, though I couldn't admit it." He looked down at his shoes. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know. I'm trying, not for you, for me." She studied his face for a long moment. He wasn't healed. He wasn't whole. But for the first time, he wasn't hiding behind blame, and that meant something. "I hope you keep trying," she said. And then she turned and walked back inside, not out of cruelty, but because she had made peace with the fact that her life was no longer his to enter on demand. That night, Sophia sat by the fire in the residence lounge. A student from the foundation performed a violin piece dedicated to her. As the music filled the room, Sophia closed her eyes. She had spent her first 65 years giving everything to others. Now the rest would belong entirely to her. True freedom doesn't always come from starting over. It comes from reclaiming what you were told to give up. For Sophia Harrington, freedom wasn't found in grand gestures or dramatic confrontations. It came quietly, in the form of boundaries, self-respect, and finally choosing herself. She spent decades putting others first, believing love meant sacrifice. But love that demands your silence, your service, and your dignity isn't love, it's control. Sophia's story reminds us that it's never too late to draw the line, to choose peace over pleasing, purpose over obligation. You don't owe anyone your life just because you gave them a piece of it. The most powerful thing you can do at any age is to decide, this chapter belongs to me. Sophia's transformation is a lesson for anyone, especially older adults who feel trapped in patterns of giving and guilt. You don't need permission to prioritize yourself. Whether it's moving into a new space, setting financial boundaries, or rediscovering a long-lost passion, your later years can be your most empowered. Start small, declutter a room, revisit an old hobby, or finally say no to that one obligation that drains you. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this, please like and share with your friends. Your support keeps these stories alive. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a new episode. And if today's story touched your heart, leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. Take care, stay well, and see you in the next story.